I'm going to take a look at DHCP for a few minutes. The DHCP Management Console, the MMC, is already open. There is a scope, an existing scope in the server itself. So it's serving the address pool from 192.168.120 to 192.168.100.50 would be the address range that we would give out the DHCP addresses on. If I needed a new scope, wanted a new scope, I just simply right click on the server and new scope, click on new scope, and then we get our new scope. So let's go through the configuration. The name is just for you. We'll call this one demo. Description, if you need one, a description goes there. The starting IP address 192.1, yeah, let's go to the starting IP address 192.168. Let's say 50.100, and we'll go to 192.168.50.200, which should give us a range of 100 addresses to hand out with DHCP. The mask down here is because I messed up the first time and I didn't have anything in the starting IP address. It says it's a Class A network. We can either go in here, type in the subnet mask, or put in the number of bits of the subnet mask, and we'll say 24, and we get the 255.255.255.0 standard for a Class C subnet. Next, we're going to add exclusions, ranges that we don't want to be assigned in this network. If I wanted to, say, exclude 150 to 160, I would go in here and put 192.168.50. .150 to 192.168.50.160. These ranges will, after I add them here, will not be available for assignment by the DHCP server. The lease duration, the default's 8 days. We can change that to whatever we want. Depends on your circumstance. 8 days is a pretty good place to start. To configure the options, let's look at the options here for a minute. The options, add a router. Let's say it's 192.168.50.1. Router being the default gateway is the router. The parent domain, the DNS server, let's say that we're going to use 10.60.66.253, and this can be anything, but this does have to go in, needs to go in by IP address. It would be handy if I put it in the IP address instead of in the server name. Ranger, and let's go to 10.60.66.253, and then we'll add that address. Parent domain, if we had a parent domain, we could put that in here. So the parent domain would be, for this one, for instance, would be carguru.edx, and the server name would be Ranger. Win server, if we have a Win server, 10.60.4.1, just to have one. This is where the machines will attempt to register for WINs, for NetBIOS configuration. Do I want to activate the scope right now? I'm going to say no, because I don't really want to start handing out addresses. And finish. And so we have two scopes, neither one of which is active, 192.168.50.0. We call it the demo. The address pool, 50.100 to 50.200, and the exclusion with the X, 150 to 160 IP addresses excluded. If we had any leases, they would show up here. If we wanted to create reservations, a new reservation, we could go in here and assign a reservation name, 192.168.50. something to an address, the MAC address, and then a description. I'm not going to go through that because I'll mess up the MAC address. So if you want a computer to always get the same IP address from DHCP, you can do reservations. Keep in mind that if you do reservations and DHCP is down, that machine will not have an IP address. You may want to, for your high value machines that you want to have the same IP address, you may want to consider just using static addresses. The scope options, we configured a couple of them. We did the router, the DNS server, the Win server. If we had other options to configure, we could go into configure options. Advanced gives us the options to be able to go in and have it pick out the options that are available for Microsoft 2000 and Microsoft XP and NT5 and above. One of those is to release the DHCP lease on shutdown option. We could just click on that. That gives us options in addition to, and this is the one that I just put in addition to the standard options. Should we have multiple subnets that we're going to use, and we for instance had a public and a private address, and we only wanted to configure addresses on the private network, then we could go into the server configuration, advanced, and in the bindings, if I had more than one NIC attached to this machine, I would have more than one NIC here. Then I can select which network I want the addresses actually to be handed out on. If I needed credentials to do DNS registration, I would put those credentials in here. Conflict detection attempts, if we want to be sure that the address has not already been handed out, in the server advanced here, how many times we want it to ping, 1 or 2, one's usually sufficient. Checks to see if the address has already been used before it hands out the address. Just a little protection to be sure that you don't get duplicate IP addresses. In the DNS configuration of the server, we have the default here, enable DNS dynamic updates according to the settings below. Dynamically update DNS only if requested by the DHCP clients. The other option is to always update it. One of the other radio buttons are available here, so we can either let the clients that are capable of updating Windows 2000, Windows XP, Windows Vista, and on up to put their own records into DNS, or we can have DHCP put the records into DNS. Discard the A and pointer records when the lease is deleted, when the lease goes away. This option here is for legacy machines, NT4, Windows 9X, 95, 98, and Windows Millennium are not capable of doing their own dynamic updates, so the DHCP server will update for them. Okay, back to the general. Automatically update statistics, enable DHCP audit logging as the default, and then show the boot P folder. Those are the configurations that you should be concerned about with DHCP. The only other thing, server options and scope options. We can configure options, for instance, if everything on the server was going to get the same DNS address, then we could configure the options for DNS or on the server, and then if we didn't make any modifications in the scope, that would be the address that would be handed out. So scope options override server options. Hopefully this has been useful. That is a how to configure, how to for DHCP. Thank you for watching.